Hey guys, welcome back. It's finally time to get after this chain adjustment. If you haven't watched my previous video, I'll put a link up here and of course down in the description if you want to check that out. It was about swing arm spools, stands, and verifying your chain tension. And if you don't already know, you need to be doing this every 500 miles. At least cleaning, lubing, and verifying whether or not it's still within specification. If the chain actually falls off, it could be catastrophic damage for you and the bike itself. This is something truly important for you to do. Whether or not you want to pay for it to have done or do it yourself, it's very, very important for your bike. And before we get started, I'm still waiting for the exhaust system. I can't wait to get that put on. I got to ride with a buddy of mine, Kyle. His YouTube channel is Unprofessional Kyle. I'll link that as well. Once I get that video put together, I'll throw it out there for you. But he has an MT-07 with the Yoshimura Exhaust that I want. So it was really cool to get to ride his bike. We got to swap off between the R7 and the MT-07 and just kind of get a feel for the bikes, which was really, really cool. So that video is coming soon. And of course, the video for installing the exhaust system when I finally get it, and then of course the rest of it for the intake and whatever kind of tuner I'm going to do, whether I'm going to pay for it or buy a specific type of tuner that will allow me to do it myself. So we'll see. Stay tuned. Those things are coming. If you're enjoying the content that I'm putting out, please take the time, like, comment, do that little thumbs up thing. That's huge for the videos, and it lets me know that you like it and gives me motivation to make more. So hopefully we'll see you for future videos. So for the first step here, I'm going to loosen the locking nuts on both sides of the swing arm here. The second nut in this line here, right? This is your main adjustment nut, and this simply just locks this nut from moving. We're just going to break that nut free. So you can tell now I can spin this nut. So we got to do that on both sides. Break that one free as well. Once these two are undone, our next step is to come over here with our 27mm socket. Now I have a deep one on here. It doesn't matter whether it's deep or shallow. Shouldn't matter. There's enough space in here. I am using a longer ratchet, and that's mainly just to get the extra torque. Once you're on here, we're really just trying to loosen this up. You could probably do it with a 3/8 set, but we're going with a 1/2 inch. Just a few turns here should. So with that being done, we should be able to, at this point, tighten or loosen. Move your whole rim and tire forward and backwards, depending on whether or not you need more or less slack in the chain. And what's cool here is you've got a couple of little markers in here that you need to match up on each side. You can tell that this little metal bracket here is going to go and fit up with these little gashes that are inside the swing arm here, and that's what we're trying to match up on both sides. So not only do we want both of these to match up on both sides, but we also want our slack to be at the right distance. So we'll have to measure our slack, tighten these up, make sure that they're both on the same exact line on the swing arm before we actually measure our gap. We're measuring from the bottom here to the middle of the chain. So we're pushing about 60mm. So let's go ahead and tighten it up a little bit. So doing it this way is going to tighten slightly. And what I'm going to do is just kind of line it up with the short. So maybe a little hard to see, but right now I'm pretty much lined up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm right at this 6th line right here, just barely starting to cover it. We'll go on to this other side and do the same. In this instance, we're going down instead of up with the wrench. Okay, now that I've done my adjustment to what I think is necessary, I'm going to walk the bike forward, walk it back, and then forward, and then we'll put her back down. And at that point, what I'm going to do is verify again. Still on my 6th on the left side, and I'm almost on my 7th on the right side of the swing arm. So I'm going to pull this one out a little bit more and match it up with the other one. Okay, they look generally about the same right now. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and roll her forwards and back one more time. Now it doesn't say to do this in the manual, but on previous motorcycles that I've dealt with, this was an important thing to do, to kind of seat everything in play. So whatever movement may or may have not happened, once you've run it forward and backwards, you'll want to take the time to check the marker and see where it's at. So that one is just barely revealing the seventh mark. And of course it's hard to see on the video, but this one is doing the same thing. So they're very, very close to each other. That's pretty much exactly where I want to be. You see, I'm not just trying to give it everything I got. It's just a little bit of pressure. A little bit of pressure gets me to 50. I am totally good with that. I don't want to do any more than that. Now that we got each side lined up and ready to go, and we're within our specification of the chain, it's time to start torquing things down. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go after this lug nut, or the axle nut first. Get set up on 77. If you don't have an assistant to help you, sometimes you got to get inventive. Sit on the bike, applying pressure on that rear brake, and pull up. About 77 foot-pounds. Good to go. Okay, now that we have our axle nut torque, the next thing to torque is these, our locking nuts. So you get your torque wrench, 12 foot-pounds. Put your open end on one side. You'll need a deep socket, 12 millimeter. We just want to make sure the wrench doesn't move while we tighten down the locking nut. So you can tell that's not very much pressure at all. Let's do the other side. And just make sure this wrench doesn't move. So little to no pressure really to get 12 foot-pounds on those locking nuts. We're within specification, everything's torqued back down. Checking our tension one more time, just to make sure nothing moved when we torqued everything. And we are still down at that 50. That is perfect. So, good to go. So that about wraps it up, guys. Pretty easy job. I'd say the most annoying part of it is trying to line these up perfectly because the lighting in the room is always kind of weird. So that is probably the hardest part, lining these up. There are other tools, other methods out there. I do have one, which is something like this that you could apply to the sprocket where the chain goes, and it kind of helps with kind of lining whether or not your chain is perfectly straight. It's like a third method, another way to do it, another additional method, but you do have to take off all the plastics to kind of get at it. I'd say at this point, I am pretty comfortable with being lined up in the same exact spot on the 7th bar, so I'm gonna leave it as is and go with it without using this tool. I'll link something like this in the description if you're interested in it. Like I said, on most other bikes, I've always used this. I just don't wanna take that apart, and I feel pretty confident right now that I'm pretty close. Unless I start seeing some kind of weird rubbing or weird wear on my tires, I'll probably be fine without this thing. Look what came in. So this will be next week's video. We'll go ahead and super excited for this. I've never had a bike with a exhaust system on it, so this is going to be really, really cool, guys. And I already know this thing sounds amazing because I've heard it on an MT-07. The thing sounds fantastic. So this will be next week's video, full exhaust system install. I don't know what I'm gonna do for intake yet, and I don't know what I'm gonna do for a tuner, but we'll at least get this bad boy put on and we'll actually start sounding like a cool ass bike. So thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you next week.